Hello and welcome to Lesson 1 of the Theory Frenzy Grade 1 tutor book. So we'll start by just opening the book up and having a look at a few introductory pages. Again, you have a repeat of the introduction that explains about how you've got lesson aims, which are shown in blue, and then written tasks, which are shown in green. You then have a page which congratulates pupils on passing their first steps theory examination and gives them encouragement to move on to the grade 1. Then you have a repeat again of the pages that were given in the first steps tutor book, where you have the essential elements of music, just as a reminder. Then you move on to lesson 1 itself. Now in this lesson we'll be learning about ledger line notes in the treble clef, and then you'll be understanding about the treble clef and bass clef. Then there'll be some sections about ledger line notes in the bass clef as well. And then you'll be shown all the notes that you need that go above and below the ledger lines in both the treble clef and the bass clef. So the section starts by just a little bit of revision and shows you again the ledger line note middle C that you learned for the first steps tutor book, and also gives you the opportunity of actually writing those. Then we move on to notes that weren't covered in the first steps book. And this is where we start to go above the stave and below the stave. So your first note that you've got here is your high A note, and that's above the treble clef stave. And you then have the opportunity of having to go at writing these notes on a semibreve, a minim and a crotchet. The next page after that talks about understanding the clefs themselves. Now, for this particular grade, you just need to know about two clefs, which is the treble clef and the bass clef. There are other clefs in music, like the alto clef and the tenor clef, but at this particular level, you don't need to worry about those. They will come later in your theory course. Now, all you've got to remember really about the clefs is that any notes that are shown on the treble clef are shown for high instruments like the violin, the flute, the clarinet, trumpet, those sort of instruments. And then the bass clef notes are shown for the lower instruments like the double bass and the cello and the tuba and bass clarinet. So you do have the two clefs depending on what instrument you play. Obviously on the piano, because you're using both hands, you do the treble clef notes in the right hand and you use the left hand notes as bass clef notes. Then you have your first introduction to the middle C note, which is in the bass clef. And then you have the opportunity of writing the middle C in a semibreve, minim, crotchet and dotted minim. The next page then introduces you to all the notes that you need to know for this exam that's on ledger lines above and below the stave. So my advice to you is to make sure you know these notes very well, because I suspect that at least one or two of them will come up on your exam sheet in some format. So the notes that you've got below the stave is the D, C and B in the treble clef, and above the stave is the G, A and B. And in the bass clef, the notes below the stave is F, E and D, and above the stave is a B, C and D. And then after that you have a writing task where you're asked to try writing some of these notes on the stave below. Some will be in the bass clef and some will be in the treble clef. And that completes lesson 1.